What is going on Facebook? And if you are over at Mile High Radio listening to this, hey, how you doing? You know, I wanted to come on real quick here before we got started, just to say something real quick. Lynn, you have been working overtime at Mile High Radio. And I don't want to get started until we make those announcements. You added some amazing shows to Mile High Radio recently.
They are, including our amazing show. But yeah, some really good shows. Amazing people. They're so grateful to join the Mile High Radio family, and some great programming. So I'm looking forward to it. And it is in, I really wanted to push this to celebrate International Podcast Day, which is coming up this. People like you and I are always promoting what a great platform this is, the benefits of it, how much fun it is, the people that podcast. So I really wanted to celebrate that. So it works out perfect with the programming at Mile High to be able to launch these 6 new shows to air starting this Saturday and every Saturday. So it's on the schedule. If you visit the website at www.milehigh, and that's high, H-I, milehighradio.com. You scroll down a bit, you see the schedule, and they're going to be there. And I'm really excited. Some great shows. There's a new one for me that I had never heard of. I didn't know was Appalachian Pie.
And I hadn't heard that one either.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of excited to actually get to know more about that show, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so I listened to some episodes because they, Blaine submitted, and I listened to some episodes and shows. It's really, really interesting. Blaine the hillbilly, and they talk about all these different things that pop into their head and culture, and so I was quite excited to see a new show because I was familiar with the other ones. So,
well, I think a lot of times what happens is we get so used to seeing the same shows because we kind of run in the same groups. So we see the same shows all the time. And after a while, it's like a breath of fresh air to see something completely new. I'm not talking about even, maybe a new show by a host that you're familiar with, a completely different show, someone that you'd never heard of before. And then you find that it's just a fantastic show. I guarantee you this is a show that sounds like just like right up my alley. So there's a little redneck in all of us, and a little bit of hillbilly in each and every one of us too. So I am excited to see that or to listen to that show. Just like Terra Firma, Drew Carson, congratulations, and Revelations with Cole Johnson. Cole, congratulations! You have been such an amazing guy and an amazing friend for so long. So thank you very much for reaching out and becoming part of that Mile High family. So moving on to what we're actually going to talk about tonight.
Mm-hmm. I think we need to share it out. We need to share this out too.
Well, of course we're going to share this out because that's what we do. We love to share. We are just people.
Share. Yeah, I like this topic because I think this is something we hear somebody talk about a lot. Somewhat. People. I don't know why I keep saying that. We hear people talk about this a lot. And in earlier shows that polls that you've done, we had done an episode about things that couples argue about the most. And so we're going to talk about like the best and worst year of marriage and some other things thrown in there as well. So this would be a good topic. Great topic for people to weigh in and see if, that was the same for me, or no, it wasn't that. No, it wasn't, none of these were an issue at all. And I think maybe that speaks to, we're not given a manual for relationships. We're not given a manual for life or parenting. We're just kind of dumped here with no. So, we have to build those skills along the way and depend on mentors and parents and siblings and teachers and all of that. So, it's more skills to build. And unfortunately, we don't always put the time into building those interpersonal skills as we do for work and career and things like that.
Well, I think it can be said also that maybe our parents aren't always the best role models for a lot of us as well. I mean, you look into the 70s and in the 80s. The 80s had one of the highest divorce rates of all decades up to that point. And I came from a split family. So for me, seeing my mom and dad married was different than, say, seeing like my dad married to his wife now. Two very different dynamics, which one do you look at as far as what you want to kind of model yourself after? So obviously the one that sticks is the one you'd like to model, but at the same time, you really, like you said, you kind of have to find your own way. And this article that you had found, that you had shared with me, the happiest and hardest years of marriage are finally identified. I was like, no way possible. No, you can't tell somebody what the happiest and hardest years were. But then as I kept reading through it, I was like, oh my God, they're talking about me.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone either. Well, I know you're not alone. I mean, I know you're not alone because we all talk to people, we talk to friends, and as coaches, we talk to clients that will share things, parts of their lives. I was reading that, and I think in that article it said something about, I can't remember now because I don't have it in front of me, something about divorce rate in the UK up like 950,000 or something like that.
Yeah, 950,000 out of 2.1 million people are end up in divorce. Hey, Carlos Phoenix is on the line in the show with us. Hey, Carlos, how you doing, man? So I'm just going to read through this here real quick because I do have the article up. It says, cool. Not all couples realize that the effort from both partners is needed in family life. In accordance with this data, 950,000 marriages in Europe out of 2.1 million eventually end in divorce. A study from Slater and Gordon lawyers identified which year of marriage is the happiest and which is the hardest. So going through this article, let's just kind of break it down for people. Let's just kind of like touch base on each one just to kind of throw it out there because, we don't really have time to discuss this entire article piece by piece. However, what we do have is we've got the ability to break things apart and kind of share our perspective and our experiences through these things as well. So here it says up to years 3, there's an opinion that love lives for 3 years only. Now, that's sad. That is very sad because I disagree a little bit because you always love the person to some degree, always. That love matures, changes over years, yes, but you're always going to love them. I think what they meant to say is lust only lasts for 3 years because I think people mistake lust and love quite easily, especially in that first 3 years of marriage.
Yes, I agree. They meant lust. I think that because they're saying that people have that idea, and I think that is what contributes to divorce is people have that feeling in the beginning and they think this is love and this is the way it's supposed to be all the time. And it's not. And we couldn't live life if we felt like that all the time. Because you think about it, you don't think about anything else but that person. You let stuff slide. You don't pay as much attention to stuff. If you spent the rest of your life in that, like, you couldn't live. So, I mean, that really is that is just a built-in function naturally that you're not going to stay in that place. It's sort of a self-preservation thing that happens automatically. You stay there so that you can bond to that person. Stay there because life would fall apart. You wouldn't do anything. You would just
I agree completely. I mean, you can't stay in lust forever. It just, things don't work. I think And I think that is the reason why it showed that. Okay, so it says that it's the third year of the marriage, which is believed to be the happiest. And then following that up until year 5, that's when you're starting to see most of your divorces. And I believe that because people live in that state of lust, and then when that fog kind of lifts off of them, and they start realizing that, hey, this is real. This is the way it's going to be for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And things kind of settle down into their routine, and people start getting complacent. That's when you start seeing the divorces happen, because all of a sudden it's not exciting anymore. It's maybe you're only having sex, once or twice a month now. Maybe things, he's got a new job, because typically in those first 3 years, people switch jobs. Maybe he has a better job or gets a promotion at work, and things get a little bit more stressful. So that weighs into it. And then maybe she's doing the same thing. Now she's got a job and possibly a child. You have a child with you. So now that stress starts weighing in on her, because face it, fellas, the women do 90% of the work when it comes to raising children and doing the housework and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to get into that here coming up in the 5-year mark here. But, but that's where you're starting to see more people talking about, divorce. Maybe we shouldn't be together and fighting more.
That was very interesting that the third year is considered the happiest year. But, the first year flies by, and, we get to that place, and, and not that it's bad in the first few years, that lustful stage, because you're like 2 teenagers, and hell, there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Right.
But the first 3 years, sure, because they zoom by, and I totally agree that is probably about the happiest time. You're more likely to not have kids at that point. You've just been having fun and getting to know each other. And I mean, some do have kids right bang from the get. I think that is the point where you settle into that nice comfort. You're still really enthralled with that person. You're still really engaged, but then you reach that comfort level at year 3. Absolutely. And then, like they say in the article, that's about the time you start talking about starting a family, if you haven't.
Yeah. And coming up at the end, we're going to talk about some stats that I found kind of interesting and that I actually went and did a little bit more research on afterwards. So, but, getting into year 5, year 5 is where they say that the first real problems start. During this period of time, the children are still small and demand a lot of care. This is very hard to combine with work, housekeeping, and everyday problems. The 5th year, after 5 years together, the couples start thinking about divorce and turn to lawyers. Yeah, and I don't remember this so much in my relationship with my wife. Year number 5 for us. I was in the military, so by year number 5, I was deployed overseas. So we didn't see that problem so much, but what we did have is that separation anxiety. We were constantly arguing and fighting. I was overseas. She was here at home. She would go out with her girlfriends at night, and I would be jealous because she was out having a good time while I was over in some sandy dust bowl, sitting there hotter than hell, 103 degrees at night, and trying not to drown in my sweat, while I was stationed over in Kuwait. So that was where we kind of had our problems. It wasn't so much of you've got more to do or this, that, or the other. It was really jealousy over the free time.
Yeah. Oh, I could totally see that. So I wonder if it would take a break then, and it would like stop for the time that you were gone, and then the years would pick up again. I wonder, dog years, how it would work then if you're in the military. But I don't remember fifth year being like that. I don't remember the 5th year being like that. But yeah, by the 5th year, you're like, maybe you've bought a house, you've got a little kid or 2, depending on how busy you are getting it on. And like who's picking up the kids, and you've got, appointments, and you're juggling your career, and you're in your careers for a while. So very interesting. I was surprised by that fact that they're saying the 5th year was the hardest year.
Well,
yeah.
Carlos brings up a good point. He says, I think the problem is that people are not who they think they are, and they change, and the change may be in opposite directions. And that's very true, especially when it comes to careers. When, because if you get married young, and when I say young, I'm talking somewhere between 18 and 25. I still think that's very young. And when you get married at those ages, you really haven't established any one career. And if you've gotten through college and you have established a career, you're at that point in the career where everything you do, every move you make is very crucial to the success you're going to have in that career. And what you are at work versus what you are at home are very different people sometimes. And I think he's absolutely right. You may see that character shift. You start bringing that work persona home, or something along those lines. And maybe those people that you thought you fell in love with when you were young and just getting out of college, ready to take on the world, those personas no longer really exist, because now reality is set in, and 5 years in, it's stuff gets real.
And I think at that age, especially when you get married young, you don't even really know who you are at 18, 19, 20. I think about myself in my 20s, and I think I got married at the first time at 27, and we had been together for a long time. And, but I think, I am totally, there's me, but I think you don't even really know who you are in your 20s. So absolutely. But I think Carlos is right. I think because we work hard to impress that other person, we want to make sure that person doesn't leave. We're working to, we put our best foot forward. We're looking fine. We're making sure we get in shape or stay in shape, and our hair is looking hot, and, got the good clothes on. And I think as nice as that is, if that somewhat isn't maintained, of course you're naturally going to do that, but I think we have somewhat of a responsibility to maintain that through our relationship, to look good and take care of ourselves for our partners. And I think that's where a lot of disappointment comes. Some people may totally be a completely different person and just let it all hang out. And
well, yeah, by year 5, you're more comfortable.
What they look like. Yeah. Sweatpants all the time. And, so, I think you somewhat have to, that's my opinion, but you should somewhat maintain that. But I think that's maybe a little bit where the disillusion comes from, is maybe some people act a certain way, or they pretend to like things that they don't normally like because they want to impress that person. And like admitting that they like football or something and go to games, and they really despise football, and then they argue about it with their spouse. And if you really don't be honest, and if you want to be willing to sit through a football game with your spouse, but don't act like you love football, because then it's going to be a problem later on. So yeah, you have to be honest.
You're absolutely right. I wish my wife still hated football. It is so much quieter when she hated football. I actually got to watch my game without having to flip back over to her game. I'm just kind of teasing a little bit, but seriously, you're absolutely right. People will do that. They'll put on one mask and they'll wear that mask out until they just possibly can't do it no more. And then when the shoe finally drops, it's like, oh, holy shit, who are you? I don't even know this person in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What was that Carlos said?
It says, oh, wow, that just covered us both up. It's sure. I've never seen a comment so long that it covered both hosts up. That's funny.
Don't make me laugh. My stomach can't take it.
Thank you, Carlos. It's about pressing. It's that as humans, we convince ourselves that we are who we are. Most people are not aware of who they are. not who they think they are. They are a product of their, oh, now I'm, sure, now you moved it on me.
Not sure if it's about impressing. I think some of it is about impressing, for sure.
Definitely. And that's really what it boils down to, I think, in the beginning. And then year 5, that's why, like I was saying, the mask finally comes off. You start seeing the true nature of the person that you're with. Sometimes that true nature
is not pretty.
It's not pretty at all. Now, in year 7, it says, as if a couple stays together after 5 years of marriage, then another barrier is waiting for them to overcome. It's the 7-year of family life, which specialists name the wall, or I've heard it called the 7-year itch. I'm sure a lot of people have heard it called that. It says, by this time, family life becomes routine. There might also be financial issues, child care issues, and quarrels about sharing household responsibilities. That one hit me right in the schnoz. Because, I don't, especially being that I come from, deployments and stuff like that. I would be gone for a while. I'd come home. I'd step into the family, and they'd have their routines down. They knew exactly what they were doing. And then I came in, and I would try to change it up, and everything would just be thrown into chaos, and it would cause fights. And we would literally have fights where we were yelling at each other and being brutal to each other. I mean, just absolutely mean, hitting every one of those buttons that after 7 years you have found all those buttons. We hit every single one of those buttons just to hurt and piss off the other person. Mm-hmm. And that was right in that 7, 8, 9 year mark when this was going on. So absolutely, when I read that 7-year one, I was like, yep, they're talking about me. I know it.
Yeah, I agree with 7 years, because you're really, really in it. And we're talking whether you're legally married or not, you're living together, you have children, you're really in it by then. You've got the extracurricular activities, you've got, and really, Hugh Hefner passed away?
Wow, we just had a breaking moment in the
breaking news.
We could put another man on the moon, and she would have been like, oh, whatever. Hugh Hefner passes away, and oh, holy shit, the world is going to come to an end.
Well, the world's like oldest icon.
The world's oldest Playboy has now passed away.
Anyway, well, thanks for letting us know. Wow. So, I think by 7 years, you're really in it. Yeah, you've got routines. You've been in your career for a while. Maybe you're like, hate your career, and you bring that shit home, and routine is a killer. And for me, yeah.
But then you're an Aries like I am, and for us, routines don't work. We have to be spontaneous. We have to continuously be moving. It's just the way we roll. Now, for people where routines are important, maybe that's not as much of the case. Maybe it's the spontaneity that bugs them so much. Maybe they can't handle spontaneity. Maybe that becomes chaos to them. So, keep in mind what type of personality you are. Like for me, it's got to be go, go, go. It's got to be constantly changing, because if it becomes routine, I'm going to get sick of it. I'm going to get bored.
Oh, yeah. Like poke my eyes out with a fork. Yeah. And that's why I hate cooking, I think, because every night you got to make dinner. Like that just kills me. I hate it. But yeah, and good point you made between routine and spontaneity. Yes, routine is important. Yes, sometimes routine is important. You don't have a choice. If most people, you work Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and you have that routine, you have to. But it doesn't mean you can't throw things in there to be spontaneous. It doesn't mean that you can't all of a sudden at like midnight say, hey, let's go out for a Sunday, or let's go for a drive and go, let's sleep out on the trampoline tonight, this summer night. Like, it doesn't mean you can't be spontaneous, but I think we forget that because we get so serious about life. We have responsibilities and we have to be adults, and because we're told, like, grow up and be responsible and all that stuff. And it's like, I think it just, and then we go through life and it's just, everything's so automatic. But yeah, I need spontaneity. I mean, yeah, I like routine too, but yeah, I got to throw some stuff in there. Got to be spontaneous. I like to try something new. I want to, yeah, because that just, and that goes for the bedroom too. So, because if that gets routine, that is crappy too.
Yeah. Well, and then you also got to look at the fact that, it kind of falls back into that, keeping yourself in shape and things like that. By 7 years, things have gotten to the point where it's like, man, you know what? I just don't want to go to the gym today. I'm just not having it. It's just whatever. She married me. She knows what she got. That's what she gets, type of deal. That's a guy's mentality. We become more complacent than women do a lot faster. Not sure if you're talking or not. I see you kind of froze up there for a second.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, I can see you. I can hear you again.
Okay.
So
do you think that men become more complacent than women, or they just become complacent about different things?
No, I believe they become, well, maybe they do become complacent about different things because, there's certain times where you come home and you kind of do your thing. You just, whether it be sit down and eat, go take a shower, whatever it is, you have the things that you need to do. And really the stuff that's going around outside of that, of what your primary function is or what your primary plan is, you kind of forget about those things. So like use this for as an example, I come home from work and say my wife is taking a nap. Well, instead of going in and waking her up and seeing how her day was and things like that, I just let her continue to sleep while I go sit down on the couch and watch television. Now, chances are that could go one of two ways when she wakes up. She could say, "Why didn't you wake me up?" Or she could just take advantage of that and say, "He's not bothering me. I'm just going to continue to take a nap." But, it's that type of interaction where after, in the first 3 years, it would have been definitely go wake her up, talk to her, find out how her day was and all those kind of things. By year 7, maybe not so much. Maybe it's whatever. I already know how her day was.
Well, we're creatures of habit, right? So I think and we operate on autopilot a lot. I think it's to really be aware of, I think it's just to be aware, to maybe just try and be aware a little bit more. Like, where can I interject something? Where can I do different? But I think a lot of times we do have that feeling that we want to do something different. What was that? I missed.
It says, get that overlay out of her face. Away from her smile.
I was sitting with that too. Yeah.
Dazing off here.
But I think year 7. I'm curious to know, people watching, what year, if you had a tough year, what year was the hardest for you? And I think it's different too, whether you have kids or not.
Adding kids, it adds a whole new dimension. I mean, there's people who will stay together purely because of children, even though their marriage has probably been over since year 4 or 5. They'll still stay together long afterwards just for the sake of the children. Then there's those people who, have children and it helps. It makes the relationship stronger. It's not the fix. I mean, that we know that's not the way to fix a problem in a relationship. But for some people, once they get to that point where they're ready to have children, it does make them stronger.
Mm-hmm. It does. I do believe, though, that no matter what, I think that barring abuse and things like that, I think that any marriage can really be, if but boy, you both gotta want to put the effort into it.
And you said a mouthful right there, because you do both have to put effort into it. A marriage isn't just two people living together. If that was the case, all you'd have to do is get a roommate. It does take effort to have a successful marriage. Mm-hmm. And it's not just, one person. I hate when people say, well, you got to meet me halfway, because it's not always like that. No. Sometimes women, you have to step up and go maybe 70% where he can only take it 30%. Sometimes men, you got to go 90% because she can only give 10%. It's not always meet me halfway. There's always got to be some give and take. You have to be willing to give more than what you receive sometimes. It just doesn't work if you don't.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's necessary. I think it takes two when it gets really tough, where it's you're needing outside help. Like, it doesn't work talking to each other. You have to go to a marriage counselor and get some outside help. I mean, that one person has to be willing. I remember my husband wanted to leave, and it was, well, let's work on this. Like, let's go talk to somebody. Let's go. And he didn't want to. So what are you going to do? Like, there's nothing you can do. That's where you need two people. But I think if you are having problems, and I know this from training, and it's going through a rough time, really it does only take one person to change a relationship. It doesn't take both people, because of human nature and human behavior and the way that one person in the marriage acts a certain way, in a way that meets the needs of the other person, that person will automatically respond unknowingly by what the other person is doing. And they'll in turn give their partner what they need. And that alone can transform a relationship. Now, that one person is doing it on their own, but you don't always need two people. I've seen this happen over and over and over and over. So we say, I think it takes two when things are really bad and one really doesn't want to go get any help. But I've seen it happen where if one person just changes their behavior, the way they talk, the way they interact with their partner's going to just respond, just automatically. Human behavior.
So
try that out for those watching.
Excuse me. Carlos brought up expectations. He says another issue is culture. Expectations are evil, and he is absolutely right. And going on through this article, says here are some factors that are worth avoiding if you want to keep your marriage strong. So it's inflated expectations. It was discovered that couples file for divorce more often in spring than in fall. Before that, they try to give their marriage a second chance. If it doesn't work out, then divorce cannot be avoided. A guy, I used to listen to this guy named Bruce Van Horn on his podcast. And he's extremely wise. And here's the reason why I say that. The one thing, I cannot tell you anything that his show was about. Couldn't tell you. In fact, I couldn't even name one episode that I listened to. However, the common theme that he kept saying in his shows for the season that I watched was when you have expectations, you set yourself up for failure, because people will fail to meet your expectations 100% of the time. And it's so true. They cannot possibly meet your expectations because you set your expectations based on what you think they should be doing. And they're not going to just free will do what you expect or what you think they should be doing. They can only do what they would do in that certain situation. So that is the only thing that ever stuck out to me. And when I learned that, my personal marriage turned almost 180 degrees just by acknowledging the fact that, hey, If I expect my wife to be one way or another, I'm going to lose. But if I just allow things to happen naturally, the way she would do them, I would never be disappointed by the outcome.
Absolutely.
And it's absolutely true.
Absolutely. Trade your expectations for and it will change everything, because people aren't going to respond the way you think, the way you would have necessarily. Their experiences are different. Their environment growing up and what they experienced and what they saw different. So, you can't, inflated expectations. Yeah, absolutely.
So just quickly touch on what Leland said. Love isn't about what the other person can do for you. It's about what you can do for them. And that's very true. To show you, I hate to say this the way I'm going to say this, but it's absolutely true. You have to show people by doing. And in order to show someone that you love them, is you have to do more for them than what you expect in return. And that's,
love is a verb. Love is a verb.
Yeah, it's a do. You got to do it. It's an action word. So
that's right. If we made our partners feelings and put their feelings and their needs first, and we did that for each other, both people get what they need. It's like in third world countries, when you see them driving and you think, how did they drive over there? It's chaos. They only have one rule, and that is to watch out for the person directly in front of you. So all those people are watching out for the safety of the person in front of them. That's how it works. That's why it works. So if we put those needs and those emotions and the feelings of our partner first, we're guaranteed to have what we to grow together.
People say that you are responsible for your own happiness, but truth be told, is as true as that statement is, you're not maybe responsible for the other person's happiness, but what you do to show people that you love them, to show them that you support them and things like that, that helps you be directly, what's the word? I don't want to say responsible. You're not responsible for it, but
you contribute.
You contribute and you can affect their happiness really easily. So
absolutely.
So, and then
let's go on to the other things. The other second thing to avoid to keep your relationship strong.
Number 2, silencing problems. Specialists conducted an experiment among young couples, which proved that even discussions about movies can reduce the risk of divorce by half. So talking properly about your family difficulties can really save your marriage.
Just keep quiet.
I've done this before, and I still do it to some degree. And it's not probably the right thing to do, but you kind of have to pick and choose your battles sometimes. So sometimes if a battle just isn't worth fighting, keeping your damn mouth shut can be the best thing that you do.
Sometimes, yeah.
But when there is a serious problem, if the problem affects the entire family unit as a whole, then you definitely need to speak up. You need to talk right away in the beginning of the problem rather than wait until it becomes the problem.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And I think the other thing on this, as far as keeping silent, I think that goes with don't be airing all your problems to everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Your friends, because what happens automatically is then people start, because we naturally affirm that person. Oh yeah, he's an asshole then. So then what happens then when you come back together or things are fine again and you get over the argument and you work it out, that other person sort of has this feeling many bad things about your partner. That person's hating that person and now you're all fine with them again. I've seen this create a lot of problems. So try and keep things to yourself. We all have that trusted friend. Everybody needs somebody to vent to, women like the most, but find that person that you can talk to that preferably is really objective and will just listen and not get a hate on for that person. But I think that's important. You'll see some things, you'll see some people on Facebook where it's like, some shit went down and like,
we talked about that before.
And you are seeing it, and it's like you're watching a soap opera on Facebook. You can tell by every single post, the guy's a dog, he's a piece of shit, and you could just see it happen. And you can tell when they get back together because all of a sudden they're friends again on Facebook. But
yeah, they're not only friends, but all of a sudden they have that post, that kind of that announcement that so and so is in a relationship, and it's like, oh yay,
it's so funny.
I've got that one friend, and guys, we typically, we don't like to be all touchy feely and emotional and stuff like that. But yeah, even some of us have
really.
Right. But we have our friends too, and sometimes we just need to get stuff off of our chest. And and I remember sitting at the bar one night with one of my buddies, and Corinne and I had an argument, and things were not going all that well. And he looked at me just square dead in the eye and says, "Don't be an asshole. Go over there, sit down, and actually listen to what she has to say to you." Now,
that's a good friend.
That is a good friend, because he could have been like, "Yeah, man, let me buy you another beer. Yeah, whatever. Screw that woman, blah, blah, blah. Hey, let's go downtown. Let's go bar hopping." He could have done all those things. But instead, he's like, "Hey, be a man, go over and sit and listen." And had I not taken his advice, things probably would have been way different today. But it's important to have those types of friends. Not the yes friends, but the ones that are gonna take in the situation and be like, "Hey, don't be an asshat."
Yeah, because sometimes you can be wrong and not be right. So, but we do need those people to vent to for sure. We talked about this earlier. The other one is the lack of relationship building skills. And I found this interesting that they say that people that grew up in big families, the more siblings you have, the less chance you have of divorce, because you've built relationship skills, because you've had to learn to live with other people and compromise and all of that. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I don't see that as evidence in my life and the people that I've known.
No, I don't agree with that at all. I've got 5 sisters and a brother. And let me see, 1, 2, 3, and 4 of my sisters have been divorced. It's me and my brother are the only 2 that haven't been divorced. And one of my sisters that hasn't been divorced has never been married. So but she's got 3 children with 3 men. So what do you make the call? Well, how do you like those apples, folks? Boy, I just went and aired a lot of shit on my family. Anyway, sorry about that. But, so like I said, I don't agree with that whatsoever.
I don't either.
I think that family dynamic, what really makes a difference is how the mother and father treat each other. If you got 2 parents that are divorced, you do have a higher risk of being divorced. And this is what I was talking about earlier. If you have a large family and your parents stay married, you don't see the fights that don't get solved. You see 2 people communicating. You're more likely to develop those communication skills to be able to be married longer. Now, if you grow up in a family where they're divorced, or maybe you see a lot of infighting and they don't ever seem to solve the problem, they just keep stacking up more problems, and every old problem keeps getting drug into the new problem, that is going to establish that as a kind of a foundation.
Yeah.
Well, having the size of family, I really don't believe has anything to do with whether or not you're more likely to succeed in marriage or not.
Yeah, because you could have all been fighting. I mean, I know so many families that the siblings fought. They grew up, they don't talk to each other, they haven't seen each other in years, they have nothing to do with each other. Well, those were good relationship building skills, weren't they? Just because you have more people around doesn't necessarily mean, it's the same with me. I have a brother and a sister. We've all been sister once, me once. Like, I was quite shocked by reading that, actually, but.
So then, excuse me, the next one is lack of desire to listen. If one of the partners does not want to listen during a fight, then the risk of divorce is much higher. Duh. That was kind of my no shit.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about that one too much. I mean, obviously, listen, just listen. Yeah. The next one, this one I get, life in social networks. Can we?
Excellent. Yeah, I used to make that joke when I'd see somebody walking by, and I actually used to say this to my wife. I'd say, "Hey, look, there goes my next ex-wife," and she goes, "Well, who's your first ex-wife?" It was kind of one of those little jokes that we used to tell back and forth, but at the same time, I guess it was funny to us until it almost happened. Anyhow.
Yeah, so life in social networks. Yeah, we sort of talked about that. Yeah.
And it's becoming more and more common all the time because people can create these relationships on social networks that fill that need or fill that gap. And then the way the mind works, when you start getting that fill of that need, you start gravitating towards that, and then things kind of progress and not realizing that same thing's going to happen. It's not any different. It's just, social networks work because when I can turn this off at night, I go back, I had exactly what I needed. And I went and I go to bed. Then the next day I can come back to it and I'll get exactly what I need again.
Yeah.
When you have to deal with the real life every day, all day, it's easy to fall into that social media trap.
Yeah, I think that you can either fight with your partner on social media, or if you get into some kind of love triangle, or there's infidelity that goes on, and the other woman or the other man contacts. I mean, there can be a lot of things going on that can happen. Absolutely. And it can go tons of different ways. So I think that's definitely something to be aware of, for sure.
I sat down at a local bar one night, just having some beers with some buddies and stuff like that. And literally not even 4 feet away from where we were sitting down, this fight breaks out. I mean, just blowout fight breaks out. A woman came storming into the bar and first she tried to hit her husband over the head with a beer bottle and missed him, thank God, because that would have been a bloody mess. But she just started beating the living hell out of him right there in the bar because she had seen messages on his Snapchat or something, some social media platform.
Yeah.
And she ended up getting arrested, but I guarantee you she had more than one lawyer the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard some stories, varying degrees of seriousness. Yeah, for sure. Next one, the one that we talked about in one of our early shows, money arguments. Money arguments. Gotta get a handle on that. Like, got to really listen, because everybody's got different habits and everybody's going to have different goals of what they want to do with their money. That's one you really got to pay attention to and really dedicate some time to. And if you have to go, talk to a financial advisor or whatever to be on the same page, like, Yeah.
For us, it was lack of communication. It always came down to lack of communication. And it wasn't going out and spending the money on something that was frivolous. It wasn't me going out and spending money on stuff that was frivolous all the time. It was it was just the fact that we didn't communicate with each other. And she had allotted X amount of dollars for certain things. I had allotted X amount of dollars for certain things. We never told each other what it was. So when we take the money out of the bank and all of a sudden there isn't enough there to do one thing or the other, well, what happens? Typically young people, and this happened when we were young people, well, I can get away with not paying my electric bill till the next paycheck or whatever. So then you start playing around with that dangerous game. And once you get that dangerous game, then things kind of just go upside down in a hurry, because you start getting late payments and things like that. And it's, wow.
Yeah, then you're going to fight even more. Yeah, and I think it is just as simple as that, as communicating, knowing what your numbers are, like really knowing. I think sometimes couples don't even know how much money comes in and how much goes out. And usually, generally it tends to be the woman that knows how much is going out. The guy doesn't. So it's really to sit down and go, okay, how much money do we bring in? How much money does it cost to maintain our home and food and all of these things and run our vehicles? And what do we have and what are our goals? I think that's the biggest problem. That is the biggest problem in most of it, is if we just sit down and communicate. Yes, good for you, Carlos. Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people don't know exactly how much it is, how much it costs. How much do you spend on groceries? I think, some people would be surprised.
And I do want to take a second here just to branch off that for one moment. If this is you, if you're watching the replay or listening to the show on one of the, whether it be TuneIns or Spreaker or Mile High Radio, if this is you and you're having trouble with finding your budget and making your payments and catching up old bills and things like that, definitely look into Financial Peace University. The things that Dave has done creating Financial Peace University, and also, people will always, people listen to Dave Ramsey every single day. And you always hear these people calling in and saying they're debt free, and then you'll hear other people talking about how they're $180,000 in debt, and he kind of works it out with them. Listen to what these people are saying, because they have the problems that everybody faces. And if you pay attention to what's said, you will find a roadmap to get yourself out of debt and out of money trouble. I promise you.
Yeah.
And that is what we did. That is what me and my wife did. And 3 years ago, we were fighting about money. We didn't have a penny to rub together, 2 pennies to rub together. We were trying to barely scrape by paying rent on a house that was way, way more than what we could afford. And when we decided to really live like no others, because one day you'll live like no other, when we decided to do that, it only took us 3 years to get our debt down and to buy a house. So really,
wow,
you guys are on the same page. Like Lynn said, get on that same page, talk to each other. Once you are on that same page, you'd be amazed what can happen in a short period of time.
If the rest of your relationship, really, if you were honest and looked, if the rest of your relationship was good, but this was something that reared its head all the time, it would be a shame to leave to just get into another relationship, because then you're just going to have to deal with that person's money issues. And if you haven't learned to sit and communicate about it, wherever you go, there you are. So many people think if they leave a relationship and they find someone else, well, then it's going to be better. But the rest of your relationship is good. It would be a shame to just, if the money is just, if this, the sitting down and talking about it and doing something about it You don't do that. That would be a shame. So sounds like a great resource. What a great testimony from you. Like, whoa, 3 years? That's
all it took. And when you look at it retrospectively, it's like, oh, that didn't take hardly any time at all. But when you're sitting there at the beginning and you look at everything you have in front of you, you're just like, oh man. It's daunting. It really is, but it works if you are on the same page. That's the only thing that works. Now, the last one, and I don't want to really get into this one a whole lot because it really irritated me. It says low education level. Research to find that people with higher education have lower chances of divorce, regardless of the gender or country they're living in. Now,
that surprised me.
Because I know just as many people who have got master's degrees and PhDs who are divorced as people who didn't finish high school. So to me, kind of a throwaway. I didn't like it. And for that reason alone is the only reason why I just like, whatever.
I call bullshit on it. Totally call bullshit on it. I don't agree at all.
So we've had a couple of bullshits. We've had one no shit, and then we've had a bunch of are really good things to take and one really good resource. So that was it. I mean,
it's been a great mixed bag. This was really good. This was really, I think it's some good things for people to really sit down and go, I think, this kind of follows along. Thanks, Leland. I think it's some good things for people to look at. What could be the issue, and it always comes back to communication. And if you're watching this and you haven't seen other shows and you didn't see the show we did on communication, go and watch that show we did on communication way back. I think it was in June. Was June our relationship month?
Yes, it was.
I think it was.
It was
go back to June and look, and communication was one of our topics, and go back and look at that, because everything leads back to that. You can't expect people to read minds. You have to be open, you have to be honest, you have to ask, you have to ask as much as you know your partner. So it was way back.
Yeah, well, it's way back for us because, we're still in our first 12 months of doing this together. So June was way back. It was a long time ago so far. So, But that is all the time we have for tonight.
It is.
It went by already.
So fast. I'd be curious to know, share this out if you think there's people that that maybe need a little bit of help, need a great resource, need to know that Hugh Hefner died. Like, holy Hannah, I can't believe that.
Yeah, we kind of went a little bit sideways on that one for a minute, but it's important because, trust me, Playboy has been the girlfriend of many, many young boys. So it was important to get that one out there. Anyways, well, if you like to hear more about what we got going on, you can find us at Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on TuneIn, Stitcher, Spoke. You can even get us each Monday night at Mile High Radio. Go download the Mile High Radio app. It is so simple and very easy. In fact, right now they probably have a pretty good show on as we speak.
Yeah.
Where else can they find
they
us?
do. They have great shows. Google Play. I think you named them all. You got them all.
I did.
They're all listed on our website at gritandgracetv.com. You can go there. They're all in a row. You can click on them and they'll link you directly. Oh, and Pippa. We're on Pippa. This is such a great platform. If you're a podcaster watching this, go to pippa.io. Fantastic platform. I love it, love it, love it. And Chris and I called you Chris. That's so odd. I always call you CJ.
Wow. We moved to the next level of our relationship. Holy cow.
Oh, that's so funny. When I talk to people and they say Chris, I go, yes, CJ. That's so bizarre. It's like calling somebody else having sex.
That's kind of funny. I cannot believe you called me by somebody else's name. That's just
I know. It's so bizarre. I don't even know what I was talking about. But anyway, you can get all the information on us, where you can find us. It's all on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, because all of these also go to YouTube, and then you won't miss any of them. But we know audio is much more doable in people's lives, so you can find all those ways on our website. So there you go.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching tonight. We had a great time talking about marriage, and if you definitely need to, come back next week. We want to see you next week too. But before next week, we have a super fun Friday episode each and every Friday. So we will be back Friday night, same time.
Same place.
See ya.